Hi there, Kelsey from roughandtumblefarmhouse.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make a no-chill pie crust from scratch. So one of the things about pie crusts that makes me crazy is, for the most part, you always have to chill them. Now this recipe will be even better if you chill it, but you absolutely don't have to. I'm the sort of person who sometimes finds myself last minute whipping together dinner or making a dessert or something like that, and so having a pie crust that you can just make and bake is awesome. Now this recipe, full disclosure, is not my own. I got it from this Better Homes and Gardens collection. I think it was published in the late 90s, and I always keep my eye out for collections like this because a lot of times you end up with a diverse array of really good recipes, and this one has recipes going all the way back to the 1920s, and those recipes I also really like because they almost always have from scratch ingredients in them. Let's take a look at the ingredients we need, and I will show you how to whip up this pie crust. One of the great things about making pie crusts is that they don't require a lot of ingredients. So all you need for this recipe is 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Then you're gonna need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then you are going to need 1/3 cup of shortening. So here I have this beautiful butter that I made over the summer from our sweet Jersey cow, Juneberry, and I froze it, and I love using this for baking and cooking. It's just so beautiful and delicious. And you can also use lard if you have it. You can use tallow if you have that around. I really don't recommend using Crisco, but a really good butter or some tallow or some lard work really well as your shortening. And then you need 4 to 5 tablespoons of ice water. So that's one of the first things you want to do with this recipe, is just fill up a measuring cup with some water and some ice, and then we are good to go. Now the tools for this recipe are pretty basic. I like to just use a fork for making my pastry. If you want to use a pastry cutter, you certainly can. You are of course going to need a pie plate. And then of course you will need a rolling pin to roll out your pie crust. Okay, so first we're just going to take our flour and add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Again, you want 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And then I'm just going to use my fork and kind of mix that in. Next, we're going to be adding in 1/3 cup of shortening. Next, we are going to cut this shortening into the flour mixture. So again, this is where if you had a pastry cutter, you could use it. I just like to use a fork and just kind of start breaking it up in the bowl. And our goal is to end up with roughly pea-sized pieces. A lot of times I often also end up just breaking it apart with my fingers. I have a friend who is a pastry chef, and she says a lot of times she uses her hands more than anything else when it comes to incorporating butter into pastry. Now it's important that you keep your pastry pretty cold, so you don't want to handle it too much. Some people also might take their butter, put it in the freezer, and then grate it into the recipe. That works well too. You really want to try and keep the little bits of fat somewhat separate from the flour. That's what's going to give you a nice flaky crust. All right, so now I have my butter pretty well incorporated here. Again, you can be using lard, tallow, or anything else, and you can see it's just kind of little pea-sized pieces. It's kind of coarse. So what we're gonna do now is add in our ice water. So for this, you're gonna take 4 to 5 tablespoons. So we just fill it like this and kind of drizzle it over just one portion. And then we're gonna mix that in, just kind of in that one spot. Okay, and once it's kind of blended right there, just kind of move that off to the side and fill your measuring spoon and drizzle it over here and do the same thing. Just kind of work it loosely in, and then just work your way all the way around the bowl that way. And once you have incorporated your 4 to 5, then you are just going to kind of whisk the whole thing together a little bit here with your fork to get it all incorporated together. Eventually, I just use my hands a little here to start making it come together. And this, I think, could use just a tiny little sprinkle more of water. Not much. Doesn't take much. And now I'm just going to work it into a ball. And you really don't want to handle your pastry too much, so I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible and handling it as little as possible. And you see it'll kind of start to come together. Okay, now if you want to, this is the point where you could take this and freeze it, you know, get it into your solid ball and put it in the freezer. Or if you're wanting this for the no weight method, this is the time we are gonna start rolling it out. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, make sure your counter is clean, make sure it is dry so you don't have any sticking. Then I'm just going to do a very light dusting here of flour. Gonna do just a little bit of a dusting here on my rolling pin, and we'll roll it out. All right, so once you have reached your desired thickness, the trick here is to just lay the crust over top of your rolling pin, slide your pie plate underneath, and roll it into place. And then just kind of let it settle in gently. And next, I'm just gonna trim off a little bit of the extra here. So I like to leave about a ½ inch overhang. I like to leave extra to work with. And don't, for the love of heaven, get rid of these extra little bits. Don't feed them to your chickens or your pigs, how dare you. Make sure that you throw some butter on them and a little sugar and a little cinnamon and make a really delicious extra treat. Right, once it is all trimmed up like that, I typically go around the edge and just kind of gently tuck it under a little. Not too much. If you come in too far, it might sink. You want this to kind of really sit on top of the pie plate. Just like that. Now from there, this is ready to go. If you want to use this and bake with it right away, you absolutely can. You can do kind of, I a lot of times do just this little thumb decorative edge. It's pretty simple and kind of a classic kitchen look. Okay, now from here, you're just gonna bake this as however is directed in your recipe. So if you need to blind bake, which means baking it before you put the filling in, go ahead and blind bake. Make sure you fill it with dried beans or pie beads or something. Or like I'm gonna do, I'm right now just gonna whip up a really quick quiche filling and put that in there and then pop it in the oven. Now this crust will work for either sweet or savory pies. If you want, you can add maybe a teaspoon or so of herbs to it if you want to make it a little more savory, or if you want to add a little bit of sugar to it, you can sprinkle some coarse sugar. I'd first maybe do like an egg wash around the top and then sprinkle some coarse sugar or cinnamon along the top crust to make it a little more sweet. However you want to customize it, you certainly can. Thanks so much for watching. Always check back here at my channel for new videos every single week about farming, family food, and fortitude.